Welcome to Web Technologies training program. In this lesson we are going to understand how to create registration form by using Angular. That means we are going to create the registration form component and also the template. In the template we are going to develop the presentation logic. In the component we are going to write the programming logic. The component has to define the list of properties for binding. For example, I would like to bind the properties like username, password, confirm password, email. So these properties must be stored inside the component, and then we have to bind the same in the respect to template. The text box in the template will be binded to a corresponding property in the component. But instead of defining all these properties directly in the component, we can do one thing. We can create the necessary properties as a model class, and we can make the model class as a part of the component, and we are going to access the model properties in the template. That is a recommended way in real time, because in future we are going to represent the same set of data. We need not access the component, we can directly access the data from the corresponding model. So first we are going to create the model class. In the model class we are going to define the list of properties that are meant for binding, and we are going to create the model object in the component. Through the model object of the component, we are accessing all the properties of the corresponding model in the template. So, and also we are going to create the URL routing for the registration. So whenever the URL is register, so then we are going to access the registration form component itself. So we are trying to create a registration form along with the following fields: username, password, confirm password, email, password, phone number, etc. So let us try to see the design of the registration form in the pictorial representation. So check it. We are going to have a registration form. Inside the registration form we are going to have the fields like username or just name, then we are going to create email, then password, then confirm password, annual income, receive newsletters, gender, country, date of joining. These are the set of properties that we have. And for the username we are going to create a text box, email also text box, password also text box, confirm password text box, annual income text box, receive newsletters is a checkbox. Checkbox means yes or no type of information. Next, gender is a radio button. Gender is radio button. Male, female, and country. Country is a drop down list. Country is going to be drop down list of values will be appear, and also date of joining. Okay, these are the set of fields that we have, and finally we are going to have the registration or register. So this is our design that we are expecting to have. So check it again: name, email, password, confirm password, annual income, receive newsletters, gender, country, date of joining. With these fields we are going to create a model class. So let's create a class ng g class user is name of the class. Make sure that does not exist already. Okay, so already we have the user. Let's create registration user. Name of the class is registration user. So now we have a file called registration user.ts. Okay, where is that? Registration user.ts. In this registration user.ts, we are going to declare the necessary properties. What are the properties do you require? Name, email, password, confirm password, annual income, next we have receive newsletters. It is Boolean data type. Next we have next one gender, country, date of joining. So these are the enough properties. Date of joining is going to be string data type, not dated data type. Okay, these are the enough properties that we have declared. So once we have declared essential properties, we are going to create an object for this class inside the registration component. So go to your registration form component. There we are going to create a property called user is a which data type? Registration user data type. So first we have to import the registration user class from the source file, and after importing we are able to create a variable of which type? Registration user type. And inside the constructor we have to create an object for the registration user class. So this dot user is equal to new registration user. And then in the ng on init we have nothing to write. Then we have to create the binding for the registration form component template. So go to your component template, some heading like registration, and we have a form. First we are going to create label, name. We are going to create a text box. ng model is equal to user dot name. Here what is user? User is holding an object of the registration user class. In this particular class we have a property called name. So we are going to access user dot name here, and also the name should be username. Class should be form control. So when we run this application and invoke the registration form, here we have the registration name. Then similarly we are going to create remaining. This must be form group, right? Div class is equal to form group. Inside the form group we are going to have the label and the text box. In the next form group we are going to create the email. Input type equal to email. This email text box is bounded with This email text box is bounded with user.email. Name is equal to email. So we have the email text box. We have name text box first, and then also we have email text box. Then we are trying to have password and confirm password. Password input type is equal to password, user dot password. That means this text box value should be bounded to which property? User dot password property. Name is equal to password. Next, confirm password. Bounded with which property? User dot confirm password property. So we have name, email, password and confirm password respectively. And also we have annual income. Annual income. Type equal to text. User dot annual income. Here which property we have? Annual income property. The same we are going to bind here. Next, annual income. And then we have receive newsletters. Receive newsletters is a checkbox. Receive newsletters is a checkbox. So we have input type equal to checkbox. What is the name of the property you want to bind? Receive newsletters property. So we have the checkbox. But see, it should be left aligned, right? So we have to create form check. So then it is going to be left aligned. And then we are trying to have another form group. That is gender and the country. So this radio button is bounded to user.gender property. Name is going to be gender. And also we have another property, male and female. And female. For the first one, value is equal to male. For the second one, value equal to female. So we have two radio buttons. So male, female. Next, we are going to have another one, that is country. Country must be drop down list. So the class should be form control. Name is what? Country. This drop down list must be bounded to user.country. Drop down list is bounded to user.country. So now we have option. Default option is please select. We are going to add additional options. For example, India, USA. We can add any number of countries, as many as you wish. So we can select any country, whatever the user wish. and for this please select value should be empty. That means if the user has selected please select, what item has been selected here? Empty. So next date of joining. Date of joining. So this must be input tag, type equal to date, user dot date of joining. So there is a date text box. User can choose any date, whatever he wish. So the selected date will be appear here. And then we have button, that is going to be submit button, or we can say register button. Class is equal to BTN success. So we have the registered button. Now the user will be able to enter the details like name, email, whatever. And he is going to click on some button. So we have selected some details and going to submit. Once we have clicked on submit, these details should be stored in the database. Here we are not going to use any database. We are going to use the local storage as a database. HTML is having something called local storage. The local storage will be stored inside the browser memory. So we can store the data into the local storage. We can get the data from the local storage at any point of time. But here is a complication. Local storage doesn't support the objects and arrays directly. Local storage allows you to store only the JSON objects or maybe the plain strings. So we have to convert your object or array into JSON format. The JSON format will be stored inside the local storage. While retrieving, by default you will get the string format. Again the string format needs to be converted into object or array format. So while storing we have to convert into JSON. While retrieving we have to convert the JSON into object or array format. This is the only way to work with the local storage. So let us try to use the local storage as a database. So we are going to create a new service called registration service. We are going to create a new service called registration service. In this registration service, we are going to write the necessary code. So this is by default having something called provided in route. That means this will be imported into app module. And then we are having a method called register. Register is the name of the method. In this method we are going to store the data. Into which one? Local storage. So first we have to get the data right. So we are getting the data of user is of which type? Registration user type. So hopefully we got some data. We are going to create a variable called users. We are getting the existing data from the local storage first. So local storage dot users. But if the users is undefined, that means we are unable to get any data. Then we are going to assign local storage dot users is equal to empty array. We are going to convert the same into the JSON format and then being assigned into the local storage. So local storage dot users is equal to JSON dot stringify of users. That means we are going to convert this array into which format? String format. The string format data will be stored in the local storage. So, and then we are trying to add the new object to the existing array. So this dot users of push of user. So here is a complication. By default we are getting the data in which format? The JSON format. So we have to convert, right? So better we have to check the condition first. If local storage dot users is equal to undefined, then we have to do this particular activity, that is users is equal to empty array, and we have to assign the empty array into JSON format into the local storage dot users, and else otherwise users is equal to JSON dot parts of local storage dot users. That means retrieving existing data. By default the data will be stored in which format? The JSON format. JSON format is being converted into which format? Array format, array of objects. So the parts method is used to convert JSON into JavaScript object array. So once it is converted, the result value is going to be stored in the users, and then we are going to add the object to the users. So once we have added the object to the users array, we are going to assign the new data into the local storage. So local storage dot users is equal to the JSON dot stringify of users. So if the local storage is empty, we are initializing some empty object. If your local storage is already having some data, we are going to just retrieve the existing data. We are going to add the new object to the existing array, and updated array will be stored in the local storage again. So this is the process of registration. So this registration method should be called in the corresponding component. So go to the component. Inside the component we are going to create a method called onRegisterClick. So in this method we are going to access the service, but we have to access the service through dependency injection. So we will never create the object for the service directly. We have to perform dependency injection in order to access the service. In order to work with the dependency injection, first of all the service class must be injectable, and we have to use inject in order to inject the service object into the corresponding component. It is only possible to inject in the constructor. It is not possible to inject in the other methods. So in this component, let's try to use the constructor in order to perform injection. So check it there. In the constructor we are going to write @inject of what service we are trying to access? Registration service, right? Registration service object we are trying to access. And then this registration service must be accessed here. This dot registration service dot, what method we are going to call? Register. What object we are trying to pass? This dot user. But instead of adding the direct object directly, we are trying to create a duplicate object. So where u is equal to new user, we are going to copy, registration user, right? Registration user. We are going to copy the data from the user object into the u object. So u dot name is equal to this dot user dot name. All the properties we should write: name, email, password. This dot user dot email, password, confirm password, and then annual income, receive newsletters, next gender, country, date of joining, this user dot date of joining. We have copied all the data from user to u. Now we have passed the u as argument. Then in order to display the message to user, let's have a property called message, and the message should be assigned to successfully registered. And this message must be displayed below the button, right? So here we are displaying the message. So now we are trying to enter some details. For example, we are assigning abc at gmail.com, abc123, 10,000, receive newsletters, mail, India, some date. Click on register. So we just click on the button. Once we click on the button, what method we are going to call? We are going to call a method called on register click. This method is going to be executing. So after entering the details of ABC, ABC123, 10,000, receive newsletters, gender, country, date, and click on register. So once we click on register, it is saying a message called successfully registered. You can see here. So we can expect the data should be stored. How do we verify the data has been stored or not? You will go to storage. In the storage, we have something called local storage. Inside the local storage, click on the URL. Then we are able to see users. Users is equal to the data will be displayed in which format? JSON format. Actually, it is JavaScript object. It has been converted as a JSON. How can you identify that it's a JSON? Because the property names are containing double quotes. For example, see name, email, password, annual income, all these are having double quotes. So it's a JSON. So we can see the JSON format. Next time when you want to retrieve the data, we can get the data from the local storage.users. So in this example, which is really missing is validation rules are missing. Let's add the validation rules to the form. So in HTML, we have already understood the form validations. That means we have a set of attributes to specify the validation rules. For example, we have input type equal to text, input type equal to email, input type equal to password, input type equal to date, etc. for validations. Also, we have some attributes for validations. For example, required, min, max, etc. attributes for only for validations. So we are able to enable the HTML validations by using the Angular templates. So in the template, we are going to add the necessary attributes for validations. So check there. We are going to add the attribute like required is equal to required. Wherever you feel like it is mandatory, we can add the required equal to required. I feel email is mandatory, password is mandatory, confirm password is mandatory, annual income optional, receive newsletters optional, gender is optional, country is optional. So wherever you feel like okay, country, let it be mandatory. Wherever you feel like it is mandatory, we can just add the required equal to required. And also it's a good habit to add the star. So this star indicates it is mandatory. By looking at the star, user can feel that it's mandatory, so that he will be able to enter the value compulsory. So I am just adding the stars wherever required. So now the form is like this. Now there is a problem. I did not enter any values. Directly click on the button. We are getting a message like successfully registered. It is not correct, right? So we have to check the form whether it is valid or invalid. But how do we check the component status inside the code? We have to access the form, right? So in order to do so, we can do one thing. We can create a reference name for this form. How do we give a reference name for the form? By giving #f1 ng form, which means that the current working form reference will be stored inside a variable called f1. Here f1 is just reference name. We can give any name in this place of f1. So we are going to represent this current working whole form as a f1. We are going to pass the f1 as argument to the method. That argument is being received here. Of which type? ng form type. Now we can check if f1 dot valid. We are going to execute all this code. If it is invalid, we are not writing any code. Simply we are updating the message like invalid form. Invalid form. So if the form is valid, then only all this code is going to be executing, otherwise it is simply saying that invalid form. So currently the form is invalid, right? That means the form is not following the set of rules, right? So I click on the button. So what it is saying? Invalid form. But we have to display the appropriate message to the user, right? So how to display the message? Go to the form. There is something called some set of classes. You can notice ng pristine, ng invalid, and ng touched. So check the classes ng pristine, ng invalid, ng touched. By using these classes, we are able to display the message to the user. So let's understand the classes. List of classes for validations in Angular. So the first class is ng pristine. Next ng, first untouched, next touched, next pristine, dirty, next ng valid, ng invalid. These are the 6 classes for validations in Angular. By using these classes, we are able to identify the current status of the element, whether it is modified by the user or not, whether it is entered by the value is entered by the user or not. So we can identify the status of the form by using validations. The first one, ng untouched. ng untouched, which means that this class indicates that the text box is not touched by the user. So whenever the class is present ng untouched, that means that particular text box is not touched by user. Here touching means clicking. The user has not clicked on the text box at least once. So when the application is loaded, I did not click on the name text box. See, I did not click on the name, I did not click on the email, I did not click on the password, I did not click on anything. So I don't click anything means by default all these are untouched. If you click on name, that particular text box becomes touched, remaining will be still untouched. I click on email, so email also now touched, name is touched plus email also touched, remaining are untouched. So for the untouched text boxes, the class will be ng untouched. So for the touched text boxes, the class will be ng touched. This class indicates that the text box is touched by the user. Next one, ng pristine, which means that this class indicates that the text box value is not modified by the user. So that is opposite of the same, that indicates, this class indicates that the text box value is modified by the user. Observe the difference. Pristine indicates not modified, that indicates modified. So by default the form is up here. Have you modified the value of any text box right now? No. Now I am going to modify the name, suppose ABC. Default value is empty. Now the name is ABC. So the value is modified by the user. So which indicates the user has modified. Before modification it was a pristine, after modification it is dirty. So the name is dirty now, email, password, confirm password, all the remaining are pristine because the values are not modified. If the value is modified, it is pristine. If the value is modified, it is dirty. If the value not modified, that is pristine. Cursor is not touched means untouched, cursor is touched means touched. So the next one, ng invalid. This class indicates that the text box value is invalid. Next, sixth one, ng valid. This class indicates that the text box value is valid. So if it is invalid, we are going to display the message, we are going to have a class like ng invalid. If it is valid, that means it is following all the rules of the validations, then the class will be ng valid. So we are trying to apply some style for this. To apply the styles, we have to go to the registration.component.css file. In the CSS file, we are going to write the code. That is, so if it is valid, we are going to show the message like color equal to, otherwise border color green. If it is invalid, we are going to show this. So now we can see a green color border has been applied for the name because it is valid, because the text box saying that it is cannot be blank. It is not blank right now, right? So we can see green color border for the same. But the problem is, it is applying for others also which is not touched really. Only for a touched text boxes it has to be shown. So one more condition is ng touched. If it is valid plus touched, then only we are going to show the border color equal to green and also border width equal to 2 pixels. If it is touched and valid, then only we are going to show this border. If it is touched and value is valid, then only we are going to see the border. Notice if it is invalid, we are not going to see anything. So if it is invalid, I am going to show another type of color, that is If it is invalid, I am going to show red color. So if it is touched, if it is valid means the green color, if it is touched and invalid means red color. Either of these will be applied. So now it is touched and valid, so green color. It is touched and invalid, so red color we can notice. Okay, if it is valid, green. If it is invalid, red. Either of these will be applied. Okay. Also, we are trying to apply some more color. That is, for example, this particular name should be containing only alphabets. How do we specify the name should be alphabets only? By going for the name text box. Simply we are saying that pattern is equal to cap symbol, which means the starting point of the string, dollar, which means ending point of the string, A to Z. But that means alphabets, uppercase alphabets accepted, plus A to Z, lowercase alphabets accepted, plus a space also accepted. Any other than that not accepted. So somebody is typing digits in the name or special characters in the name, that is invalid. It is showing red color notice for the name. Why it is showing red color for email? Because it is empty, right? If it is non-empty, the red color will be clear. So at least one digit you type, that will be invalid. If it is purely alphabets, then only it is valid. So that is the meaning of pattern. So pattern specifies that the regular expression must be checked, and moreover we have to give star. Star means any number of characters accepted. So any number of characters, we can type any number of characters, but it must be having alphabets only, no digits. So you can type any number of alphabets. So like this we can apply several types of validations. So we have just applied a required validation and pattern validation, and we have some other type of validations, and also we have to display validation error messages to the user. So how to display validation error message to user, how to display success message to user, how to display icons if it is valid or invalid, all these things we are going to understand in the next lessons. So that's all for today. Thank you.